WeaKnees is the TiVo superstore. We sell replacement power supplies for all models of TiVo. This video shows you how to install a power supply in a Series 3 TiVo. These power supplies are available on our website. For this installation, you'll need two tools, a Torx T8 and a Torx T10 screwdriver. Both are available for purchase on our website. In this video, we're going to show you how to change a TiVo power supply. Today, we're going to look at the TiVo TCD652160. That's the same in this case as the TiVo TCD658000. These two models both use the same power supply, and opening them up and changing the power supply is identical. If you can't find the model number for your TiVo, look back here near where the power plugs into the unit. You'll see a number right there on the back, TCD652160 or TCD658000. This video works for either unit. So the reason you typically want to change your power supply is because you've got a failure as demonstrated by either no lights on the front at all. So when you plug it in, you get no lights. You've pretty clearly got a bad power supply. But there are other symptoms. Sometimes units reboot with bad power supplies. Sometimes units reboot when you insert a cable card with a bad power supply. All right, first we're going to show you how to open the unit. So we're going to turn it around so the back faces the person doing the repair. There are 7 screws in the back of the unit that need to come out. 6 of the screws are Torx T10 screws. They're the silver screws in the black background. And then one of the screws is a Torx T8 screw. That's the small black one there. So we'll go ahead and remove those screws. There are several other screws that do not need to come out. Like those 4 screws are on the fan, those do not need to come out. Then we'll use the Torx T8 driver for that one additional screw there. So again, you don't need to take the fan screws out, but of course if you're swapping your fan, which isn't a bad idea, you will want to take those out. Anyway, to get the lid off the unit, you're going to basically slide back towards yourself by holding the unit in place. It slides back maybe something like ½ an inch, and then you just lift it straight off. Inside you'll see a hard drive, the power supply, the motherboard. We're going to focus on swapping out that power supply here, and we've got a replacement power supply right over here. First we're going to, first let me show you some of the hallmarks of a bad power supply. So looking at this power supply, we actually visually can see that it's got problems. There are several bursting capacitors. If you look at the dome tops on those capacitors, you'll see that they're just kind of slightly domed upward. In fact, one of them is actually leaking a bit of juice out of it. Here's the replacement power supply we're going to use. And on this one, you'll see that all these capacitors are perfectly flat on top, save for the scoring there. They're perfectly flat, so any power supply you order from WeaKnees will come like this. The other thing to note about the power supplies for this model, and again it's the TCD652160 and TCD658000, is that your power supply may not look like this. So your power supply could look much more like this power supply here. And on this power supply, it's the same model number. You'll see the model number down there. It's the SPWR00011. This power supply was made in a different factory, and TiVo basically used both of these power supplies throughout the life of the unit. So here's an example of the other power supply. You can see that those capacitors are bursting open and have failed. And on the replacement power supply, we have changed those out, and these are all good replacement capacitors. So whether your unit comes with this style power supply or this style power supply, you can replace it with the other one or the same one, as long as it doesn't have the burst capacitors. They are completely interchangeable. All right, so with the lid off the unit, basically the first thing you'll do is unplug 2 cables that have 3 connections. Let's start with the big motherboard connection. Right down there, you gotta squeeze that little tab and just pull straight up. Big cable there. Then the SATA cable to the hard drive just pulls right out of the hard drive. And that same cable is also in the motherboard. Just pull it straight up and out. pretty easy. So you've got two long cables coming out. There's a little wire harness there on the side of the hard drive that you unclip, and those are free. Then there are 6 Torx T10 screws on the power supply that need to get removed. Now these screws are actually the same as the screws you took out the back of the case, so if you get those confused, no problem. The 6 and the 6 are the same screw. Okay, so now it's unscrewed. Basically you can grab it by that big heat sink and just lift it out of the unit. We'll put the replacement in. Again, either style replacement works just fine. So here at WeaKnees, when we swap out these hard drives, these power supplies, what we like to do first off is you can see that we've lined up the holes really perfectly here, but to hold the power supply in place, we recommend first replacing that Torx T8 screw in the back of the unit. That just anchors the power supply really nicely so that all the other 6 screws that you will now put back in just line up really well. So we'll go ahead and get these other 6 back in. That one on the back was a Torx T8 screw, and these ones here are Torx T10 screws. Okay, once those 6 Torx T10 screws and that one Torx T8 on the back are in, we're ready to reconnect the cables. So let's first do that big one again. Only goes in one way, should snap right in. When you get it down firmly, you will feel a little snap, or you'll hear it. And if you pull back on it gently, it should not come out because that little tab harnesses it down. These other connections don't have any kind of tabs on them, so you just have to make sure they go in nicely. First we'll do the SATA connection to the motherboard, only goes in one way. And then the hard drive cable also only goes in one way. And then don't forget to leash that back with that little strap on the edge of the hard drive. Before you put the lid on, just make sure that this white ribbon cable is firmly seated and nice and even there. This white ribbon cable goes from the motherboard to the front of the unit, and basically it's possible that you nudged it while taking the power supply out. So at this point, it's a good idea to check to make sure you don't see any silver connectors on the bottom of the white. And if you do, just go ahead and slide it back down. It'll seat pretty nicely in that black connector. All right, so your new power supply is fully installed. It's time to close up the unit. Go ahead and put the lid on. Again, go about 1/2 inch back so that the lid has about a 1/2 inch clearance up here. And then get it firmly down and slide it forward, and it'll all seal up nicely. Any questions, look at the back corners, and if the back corners don't look like they're seated right, just slide it backward a little bit and forward again, and you should get it seated pretty well. At this point, we can see that all the holes are perfectly lined up, making it pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead and insert the 6 Torx T10 screws. All right, your power supply installation is complete.